I will start with one question that I really want to ask these ladies and gentlemen. Is the Lean IT community have been around for a few years. What do you think have been the main achievement of the Lean community for the last few years? Maybe we can start with you, Steve, if you want.
Okay. Well, what I've observed here this morning, today, that I see better and better every year that we come back, are real stories of real companies who are doing this. And when I say this, I mean Lean, Agile, Scrum, continuous integration, DevOps. But they're all doing it in a way that all of these practices sort of blend together. You can't really tell where Lean starts and Agile stops. And it's all in a very organic way that they all seem to make their own. When you say it's part of their culture, part of their DNA, that's what it looks like. When they just, it comes naturally to them. And the problem that I see is that this works so well, we have the data to prove it, that everybody wants to do it. And so now we're dispatching armies of Lean and Agile and Scrum consultants throughout the world who are trying to do it to people, do it to companies. They're doing Agile, they're implementing Scrum, they're trying to implement these massive scaled frameworks. And it just doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. That's not the way organizations and teams and people learn. So what I hope the greatest achievement of events like this is that when people see what it looks like to do it right, which is to invest in people's capability, like the ING Bank story this morning, where they realize you do need to go slow to go fast, to develop the capability, to do it yourself, to take these principles and these practices and make them your own in a way that works for your company. That's how you sustain and make it stick. That's what I've learned.
Okay. Ben?
Okay, I think the main thing I want to reflect on is to see that learning is taking so important part in Lean. It's becoming more central. The way that you're learning, I heard things like reusable learning is becoming a central part of Lean. And that's something which I think matters a lot. So I think we should put more focus on that even.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I will ask myself a question and answer it. Because, of course, some of you may wonder why I'm coming here if I'm from Toyota, because Toyota is always presented as the reference in these seminars or conferences. And the first time I came here was the second Lean IT Summit. And I really wanted to look at Toyota from the outside. Of course, I've worked around 17 years outside Toyota before joining early 2005. At Toyota, I felt I learned almost all I know today. But in the end, the IT of Toyota, I was feeling was not applying all the principles of Toyota production system that I was seeing. So I went outside to see what happened outside Toyota, and I tried to bring back inside Toyota the practice we didn't have yet. And I'm trying at the same time to bring outside Toyota some of the practices I see we still have and which are not yet embraced by the community. But I must say, if I remember the second presentation I gave here, which was called One Piece Flow, actually, is actually very close to things I see now with continuous integration and DevOps and so on. The problem I had in 2014 is I explained that maybe a bit in a theoretical way. There were not so many great examples to share at that time. Now I'm really happy to see that those examples are here, that they are shared today. And I think it makes it much more concrete for everybody. And definitely we have a lot to improve ourselves. And thanks to you guys, I will bring a lot of new informations home.
Marie-Pia?
When we started this Lean IT community, it was to create a Lean IT community. Nobody knew what it meant. And you were not present at the very first one. It was quite fun, you know, with the fight of sensei saying, yes, this is Lean, this is not Lean, you're wrong, I want to speak. So now I think it's more friendly. And I think it's more friendly because we have a better understanding of what is lean in IT especially. So it's a place where people from manufacturing started to speak to people from IT and say, okay, this is lean. And they say, we can do it that way. And now we've got a lot of examples. I remember nearly the first example Dan Jones saw on one of these Lean IT summit. And I said, what do you think of that? It was so great, one piece flow at the tact of the customer, high quality. And he says, yes, classical, Oh my God. So now we have a better understanding, we have a greater community, and it's still moving and it's still fascinating.
Thank you, Marie-Pia. Jez, what is your perspective on the community?
For me, I spent a few years basically making stuff up and working with other people who are making stuff up. And then when I discovered Lean and the Lean movement, I realized that actually I was part of a tradition. And so for me, the great thing about this is feeling part of a community of people who are focused on solving problems and seeing the common ways that we solve problems, whatever our domain, and feeling that I'm part of a bigger tradition and a bigger thing that's bigger than all of us.
Thank you. What are the main takeaway you take from the first day of the conference, from what you've seen today?
Okay. I have written 1 point for each presenter, but that will be too long. Yeah. So it's a bit. I answered already partially. I mean the fact that these are concrete examples and things that I hear in many companies. If not everybody is convinced, you cannot implement Lean. But basically, if you go for it and you show result, then you can iterate from there and do more. So maybe a question would be, what happens if the first time you try, you fail? It's better to fail the second or the third time, then maybe that will be accepted. Yeah? So that is definitely one thing I saw today. Also, I like the fact that, let's say, most of the speakers were quite humble about their journey and saying that they made a number of mistakes and they will surely make more mistakes and so on, but at the same time demonstrating brilliant results. So I think it's not false humbleness. I think it's really humbling to work in this kind of environment and have to challenge every day what you are doing. And that's definitely, I can tell you, that's what we have at Toyota. We don't think at all we are the pinnacle of the world and we do everything good just because we started to work for Toyota from day one. Yeah? But exactly as Jez just said, yeah, we feel strongly that we are part of this tradition that started with Sakichi Toyoda and automatic loom. When you think about it, it's unbelievable that this principle of Jidoka is now so central in everything we do after so many years. And actually, the reason why he did that is that he wanted to help his mother. And maybe we go at Toyota, we go to the birth house of Sakichi Toyoda. It was not cars at that time, it was automatic looms. And his mother was doing this work, and she had a lot of trouble. And so he wanted to help her and automate. And actually, his father was beating him because he said, you have more important things to do than this. Yeah? So he went to the backyard, and actually he worked in secret on his machine. Yeah? And it's really great to go to that place and see this and understand that exactly as you said, if you know what is right, and maybe your VP disagrees, but you do it anyway. Yeah? So in my organization, I'm a VP, so I cannot tell you how many times it happened that people did things that I didn't know about, and I said, but I don't remember I ever fired anybody for that. So that's why I rose my hand also when you asked.
Okay. Ben, your main takeaway from the first day of the conference so far?
Yeah, my main takeaway is to see that in all this Lean initiative, culture plays an important role in there. It's much more focused on the people. It's focused on changing their behavior. It's not about the tools. It's good to see that repeated. I'm also very happy to see a lot of case stories from the different organizations here. So it's people working at the forefront, but also people out there in the mud doing the actual changes in the organization. trying to do stuff and they're trying to find ways to do it to the people in the organization, and having those challenges every day to do it, and then still finding ways to get there to results together with the people in the organization. It's good to see those stories coming up in conferences and seeing people stepping up and presenting those in conferences. So I specifically wanted to thank those speakers who took the courage to come here today and to tell those stories to the community. I think they are very important.
Thank you, Ben. Steve, your main takeaway from this first day?
I think my main takeaway, every opening keynote from the very beginning has been Dan Jones. And it's been fascinating to watch his trajectory over the last 6 years. And he just absolutely nailed it this morning by summarizing so clearly that it really is all about learning, organizational learning, and creating the causes and conditions for that to happen. And I reflect on two cases in particular. They were all good today, but two cases in particular. The ING story, which they've spoken here before twice. And it's taken them 7 years to get where they are now, where it really is taking off. You can clearly say it is becoming, they're not there yet, but it's becoming the DNA of the way they think and they act. But it didn't happen overnight, but they've had the perseverance to go through these cycles and keep going. And the other one that really struck me was the Dun & Bradstreet story, where the person who just came on a year ago was handed a basket of very difficult organizational challenges that they'd tried to solve before and hadn't tried. And the success in a year of doing this was partly her, her success, but it was in part that the organization had been through these cycles before, and we were able to look them square in the eye and say, we've tried this before. What we've tried before hasn't worked, so we need to open ourselves to something new. And so in both cases, an organization got to the point where they realized and they accepted the old ways didn't work anymore. And I think that's the real key to any kind of transformation, whether it's individual or a team transforms or a company. So that was my takeaway.
Okay. Jez, what's your main takeaway for today?
I just love listening to stories of people solving problems. And I think I just saw a thread going through the whole day from Dan Jones onwards of just listening to the fact that we're a community of problem solvers. And listening to Dimitri's presentation about using feature branches, and then I'm giving a presentation about how you shouldn't use feature branches. So that was kind of fun for me. But the good thing about that is it makes me realize that it's not the solutions that are the problem that we should be focusing on. It's the problem solving. And what Dimitri gave was a great story about solving his problems. And that for me is a good lesson.
Marie-Pia?
I'm used to Lean Summit, not especially Lean IT Summit, but lots of them. And we have all these classical subjects as Lean is a thinking system, Lean is a learning system, and it's difficult to lead a change. What happened this year at the first day of Lean IT Summit, we'll see tomorrow, but I know some geeks inside the room, and they said, oh, it's the first time we have so many examples coming from the software skills, software expertise. So we are going from the surface of Lean to really create knowledge and expertise at the right place where people are really creating, building something, delivering something. So I think it's the new side of the Lean IT Summit in 2007.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any question in the room, in the audience? Because I have tons of them, so if you don't interrupt me, okay? Emmanuel.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, all of you, for the awesome presentations. I'm Emmanuel. I'm an IT Lean coach. I work for BNP Paribas, which is a huge French bank, very large legacy. And we are engaged into a very deep DevOps shift, which we have not been seriously doing before. As a Lean IT coach, I've never been really confronted to DevOps, and I wanted to ask to the board that you are, what should be my primary field of action as an IT Lean coach to onboard myself into DevOps and to trigger real change and real benefits from this shift to DevOps?
I think we should all just look at Jez.
Would that work? I think it's working.
Okay, sure, I'll take it. So I think firstly, what is the business or customer goal you're trying to achieve? Always find that out and stay focused on that. And make sure there's agreement on that from the management and from the people doing the work and from the customers. Like, what's your measurable goal that you're trying to achieve? And make sure everybody knows that. That's the same for anything that you're doing. And then the other thing I would say is, and this is just from Taichi Ono, I'm going to quote him, is, don't treat, what does he say? Don't treat obstacles as things that you can't overcome. Treat them as problems to be solved. I have a great video on my website, continuousdelivery.com, in the case studies from Suncorp, Australia's biggest insurance company, and it shows them doing continuous delivery with mainframes. They wanted to write a lot of automated tests. They built a driver that drove the green screens from an automated test framework. And this video is great because it shows them going, creating all these policies and so forth. So I would say, it's easy to think that these problems can't be solved. And what I would say to you is, you can solve them. It might take a lot of time. It might take some work. You might get it wrong a bunch of times. But don't think just because you're using mainframes and it's regulated that you can't do things. You can. Just work out, what can I do today? What things can I do today to do it? And just keep going.
Right, thank you very much. I still have the mic, so if I may ask approximately the same question, but a bit less optimistic. What should be my main concern in this DevOps shift as an IT lean coach?
I think anybody else could answer this question because it's always the organizational stuff that gets in the way, right? Yes. It's a lack of alignment between the different people who can influence the outcome, and political stuff, and those are generally the problems I find.
I think that's why it's so important to take the first advice of Jez. Think about why you are doing this and convince people in the bank that this is the right thing to do because they know why. Now, are they going to accept that you bring the bank down with your first trial because it didn't work? I don't know. Yeah, so probably start small also.
My sensei used to say, don't interpret Jidoka, Gemba, Kaizen, whatever, the way you want. So my main advice would be, don't interpret DevOps and continuous delivery the way you want. Just try to do it.
What do you think is the main challenge for the Lean IT community for the forthcoming years? Maybe we could start with Ben. What do you think are the main challenge for the community?
I think the main challenge is and has always been to look at how to adopt stuff in there. It's not about the solutions, but it's about how that we can learn from solutions, how that we can learn from organizations that are doing stuff, how that we can learn from the frameworks which are out there and find ways to adopt them to your specific situations. And hopefully more and more people are becoming aware of that, but it's not about copying solutions. We tried copying with Siemens my models that didn't work. We tried copying with Lean frameworks that didn't work. Now we're trying to copy Spotify. Also that doesn't work. It's not about copying. You have to go through your own learning. And I think what we can do as a community is to make it easier for people to find ways to adopt stuff in there and to find their own way of learning and find their own way to make sense out of the information and all the experiences that are out there. I think that's where we have an obligation. Not only share the ideas and share the solutions, but also help people to apply this to their own situation and find solutions for that.
Steve, what do you think are the main challenge ahead of us?
I think there are two things I'd point out. One at the grassroots level and one at the organizational level. At the grassroots level, I think the challenge is that there's plenty of data, plenty of evidence after years and years that this works. It works in manufacturing. It works in every industry. It works with the various practices, whatever you choose to call them, Lean, Agile, Scrum, whatever. And the more evidence we have that this works, the more organizations want to do it. They want to do it quickly. And to the point Jez made in his previous presentation, you should expect every iteration will produce value, but you shouldn't expect the world to turn the first few sprints. Every team needs to get their rhythm going, and anytime you point a continuous improvement of any form in a new domain, you're going to find some low-hanging fruit, but then you're going to uncover systemic obstacles and impediments. And that's where the Dun & Bradstreet story is so interesting, because those systemic impediments were exposed and they were finally dealt with at the level they needed to be dealt with, which was above the level of the individual teams that had struggled with them. And so the ultimate challenge, and I think it comes up in one way or other in every conversation, is at some point you get to things in the organization that are at the leadership level that you need to confront and say, these are mental model challenges. Some of them are related to structural issues in the industry or regulations, but as Jez has pointed out, there are ways through those as well. But at some point, if an organization really wants to make this stick and become part of the sustaining culture, it starts from the bottom up, but there has to be some form of change in the way you think about yourself as an organization and the way you lead.
Okay, Jez, what would you think the main challenge are ahead of us?
Yeah, I mean, the struggle I have is that every year we have new people coming into the industry, and they need to relearn the things that we've been learning for many years. So I think the biggest thing that I see is the need for us to teach, and in particular to teach history. The lean movement is very good, actually, at understanding its own history, but the rest of the software and IT industry is really not. And if there was one thing I could do, is wave my magic wand, it was to encourage people to look at history and understand the history of what we have. Most of my ideas are from XP, and before that from Unix. I mean, you can see microservices and a lot of modern ideas are actually just the application of ideas from Unix back in the 60s. A lot of the organizational problems we have, I mean, I was rereading McGregor's book on organizations and Theory X and Theory Y. That was in the 60s. We still haven't addressed those ideas in a lot of organizations. And I think that there's a fetish in IT for doing new things and the shiny new objects, and people focus on that instead of thinking about history, and we make the same mistakes over and over again. So I find that very frustrating, and I think the great thing about the Lean IT movement is this tradition and this history, and that's something I think we should all treasure.
Okay, Marie-Pia?
Okay, thank you. I'm a very practical person, and I think that the main challenge for the Lean IT community is to take people from the executive side and go and see the value in the work of IT people. Where does the value lie? As you said, 5%. 5% of the time is about innovation. 95% is about supporting changing something in the system to make the innovation possible, repair something that is going wrong, etc., etc., etc. So take your managers, your executive managers, and ask them and go and see not the process, not the deliverables, but the value. And then anytime I'm doing that, anytime they say, oh my God, this is our organization, I say, yes, of course. We are in your team with your process and your organization, and it's hard to see where is the value. And if they are able to do that, and if you are able to take them by the hand and go and see the value, I'm sure that it will facilitate everything about Lean.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would ask the question, what is the Lean community, or what is the Lean IT community? So it's a bit linked to what I will explain tomorrow, but if you say, okay, let's ask the Lean community worldwide to contribute to something, who feels they are in this community and who feels they are not completely, or they were and they are not, or they will be? It's, of course, it's a moving target. Yeah? It's a continuously evolving group. So, of course, in this group, we can say, okay, we are the lean community, lean IT community here today. But maybe, unfortunately, some of you are in a company that has decided to implement lean, and in three years, there will be a new boss saying, no, let's forget that, let's move to something different. Of course, I have the big chance that I'm in a company that, by definition, is implementing lean, and not even calling it lean, by the way. But I feel it's much more complicated if you are not. Yeah. So I always see these scales where okay, let's exchange. Where people say, okay, I've done lean and now I'm moving to Agile or I'm moving to Scrum or anything. Yeah. So of course, for me, the value of lean is precisely that it is intemporal, that it will not be for 1 year. It will be basically forever, because it's the principles and the values behind lean cannot change. If they change, then something would be wrong, and we would need to Kaizen the lean itself, but would still call it lean. Yeah. So that's why when we codified the Toyota Way, we called it Toyota Way 2001, the last time it was done officially within the company, because it's linked to one particular year, but constantly we adapt the practices, we improve them. So for us, it doesn't make sense to say it will be called something different tomorrow. Yeah? But then what is the community linked to this? Well, there's a community of people who have done it in the past, and many people, hopefully more and more, who will do it in the future. Yeah? So the community itself is living. And this is why when we try to do, for example, a Hoshin with the Lean IT community or the Lean community in general, it's not so easy to identify the members. Yeah? It's not like a club where you pay a fee every year and you're a member of the community. Yeah? So anyway, I'm thinking a lot about this, but no very clear answer.
Okay.
While listening at the various testimonials and explanation from the field I had today, my impression is that when a company wants to transform, it's first about Agile, and at a given level of maturity, it's about Lean, and at a given level of maturity, it's about DevOps. What would be your main recommendations to a company who has the ambition, who start a massive Lean, Agile, DevOps transformation?
Right. Steve?
I'll take a stab at this. It has to be agnostic. Would you phrase that question differently if you were talking to a healthcare practitioner or someone in the insurance industry or someone in the manufacturing industry that had nothing at all to do with the particular problem having anything to do with software? I think you need to back it up to the question, what is the problem you're trying to solve? In a strategic context, what are the vital few things that your organization needs to do to overcome the current threats you're under or you see in the near term? And how do those translate into how do you exploit the opportunities? And then suddenly the words Lean and Agile and Scrum fall away, but you start to think about things like quality and speed, time to market. Everyone wants time to market, no matter what it is you do, whatever it is your company. And Jez made a good point. Speed kills if you don't have quality. So the focus, and this goes back to Dr. Deming, you focus on quality, which enables speed. And at some point, whatever it is that you do, the work that you do, you get good at it and fast at it, and then you try to scale it. You try to take those lessons and learn them elsewhere and spread them through the company. But if you're hung up on the terms of what should we do first, this tool or that tool, I think you'll get wrapped around the axle, and it will not stick.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's people think that these terms, DevOps, Agile, have a very objective definition. I don't think that's true. I think the way to understand them is to see them in the historical context. Agile was about solving a problem of business and IT alignment in an age where process was very heavy and people thought that we needed more process to solve the problems. DevOps came from a community of practice of people building large distributed systems at scale and needing to have them change very often. It was the Silicon Valley people. Continuous delivery came from me not wanting to work at evenings and weekends. So understanding the historical context for these movements, and where that leads you is, what's my problem? What am I trying to solve? If you get too hung up, like Steve says, on the definitions and the terms, you'll end up just trying to implement somebody else's countermeasures to solve your problems, and we all know that doesn't work.
Maybe to react to this, there's a risk, of course, you start this kind of discussions, is that you will get into a lot of discussions on frameworks and get into methods wars like, okay, what's going to be the best solution? Will it be Agile, or will it be Lean, or will it be DevOps, or whatever? And with the risk of getting kicked out of this conference, I would say that actually it doesn't really matter that much. If you have a risk of getting into these discussions, just pick one methodology, start getting some good stuff out of that one and start applying that in your organization. Because one basic thing that all these methodologies have in themselves is the continuous improvement loop in there. That's present in all of them. And once you learn how you can improve continuously, you're also able to take stuff from other methodologies and find a way to apply it in your organization. So just pick one and start working with that one, learn how to improve, and then you will find ways to employ whatever from which framework which is usable for your organization.
Marie-Pia, would you like to conclude the day?
No, maybe.
My simple conclusion is please come back tomorrow.
That would be good advice.
Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.